It is Sunday evening, the weekend is ending, and somewhere in your chest or your stomach or the back of your mind, something is happening that has nothing to do with anything that has actually gone wrong. No crisis has occurred. No disaster is imminent. You are safe, warm, fed, rested. And yet there is this feeling, a low hum of dread, a vague heaviness settling over the hours before sleep, the sense that something good is ending and something difficult is coming, even though nothing specific about tomorrow is necessarily worse than any other day. This feeling is so common it has a name. Sunday night dread, and surveys consistently show that it affects the majority of working adults, not just people who hate their jobs, not just people under unusual stress. The majority, across industries, across income levels, across ages. Your ancient ancestor never felt this. Not once. The feeling did not exist. And understanding exactly why it exists now requires you to look at something most people never examine, the structure of time itself. Let's go. Start with what Sunday night dread actually is at the structural level. Because it is not anxiety in the general sense. It is a very specific kind of anticipatory dread that requires very specific conditions to exist. Sunday night dread requires a weekly cycle, a repeating 7-day unit with predictable highs and lows baked into its structure. Days that belong to you and days that do not. A boundary between freedom and obligation that arrives on the same schedule every single week without exception. Sunday night dread requires a separation between work life and personal life. Two distinct modes of existence, one where you are relatively free to be yourself, and one where you are required to perform a role, meet expectations, navigate hierarchies, produce outputs, and be accountable to people who have authority over you. Sunday night dread requires the ability to anticipate the future, to feel, on Sunday evening, the weight of Monday morning before Monday morning has actually arrived, to experience a coming obligation as a present emotional state. Ancient humans had none of these three things. None. There was no weekly cycle. The 7-day week is an invention, a social technology with a specific history. It was not how ancient humans organized time. Ancient humans organized time around seasons, around the movement of the sun and moon, around the availability of food and the migration of animals. There was no 7-day repeating unit with predictable good days and bad days. There was no Sunday. There was no Monday. There was no structure that told you that certain days belonged to you and certain days did not. There was no separation between work and personal life. In the ancient world, these were not different modes of existence. Everything you did was personal life. Hunting was personal life. Gathering was personal life. Building shelter was personal life. Every task was connected to your actual survival and the survival of people you personally knew and cared about. There was no performance of a role for the benefit of a hierarchy that did not know your name. There was no clocking in. There was no clocking out, because there was nothing to clock in and out of. And the anticipatory nature of Sunday night dread, the ability to ruin a present moment with a future obligation, was enormously reduced by the simplicity of ancient threat structures. Ancient threats were immediate and physical. A predator was dangerous when it was present. A storm was dangerous when it was happening. The future was not populated with scheduled obligations that you could feel in advance, because nothing in the future was scheduled. Now here is where this becomes interesting. Because Sunday night dread is not really about Sunday, and it is not really about the specific job or the specific employer or the specific Monday that is coming. It is about the gap between two fundamentally different modes of existence that the modern world requires you to live simultaneously and switch between on a weekly schedule. On one side of the gap, the weekend self, the version of you that chooses how to spend time. That does what it wants, when it wants, with whom it wants. That answers to no one. That is free, at least relatively, from performance and expectation and accountability to external authority. On the other side, the weekday self, the version of you that belongs to a schedule that someone else controls. That performs a role that was defined before you arrived. That is accountable to hierarchies, metrics, expectations, and the constant low-level pressure of being evaluated by others who have power over your livelihood. These two selves are not the same, and switching between them is not neutral. The transition is a loss. Every Sunday night, you are losing something, the version of yourself that gets to exist on your own terms, and gaining something that requires you to become a different person for the next 5 days. Ancient humans never had to make this transition, not because their lives were easier, But because the two selves did not exist as separate categories, there was only one mode of existence, one continuous life. Work and rest and play and social connection were all woven together in the same fabric of daily existence. You did not stop being yourself when you went to work, because going to work and being yourself were the same activity. Now here is the piece that most analyses of Sunday night dread miss. The dread is not proportional to how bad Monday actually is. Research consistently shows that Sunday night dread is experienced by people who, when asked directly, describe their jobs as fine or even good. People who genuinely like their work still experience it. People who have flexibility, autonomy, fair pay, and supportive colleagues still experience it. The dread does not track the actual badness of Monday. It tracks the transition itself. This is because the feeling is not a rational assessment of what tomorrow holds. It is a biological response to the ending of a state that the human system experiences as more natural, the state of self-directed time and activity, and the approaching state of externally directed obligation. So, your nervous system has evolved to respond to the loss of autonomy as a mild threat. Not because your job is dangerous, but because your ancient nervous system does not understand the difference between losing control of your time and losing control of your safety. Both register as something being taken away. Both activate the same low-level alarm. So what do you do with all of this? The honest answer is that Sunday night dread cannot be fully eliminated within the structure that produces it. As long as you live in a world with a 7-day week, a separation between work and personal life, and an externally controlled schedule that requires you to switch modes of existence on a regular basis, the feeling has structural causes that no mindset shift fully dissolves. But there are things that reduce it meaningfully. The first is understanding what it actually is. Sunday night dread is not evidence that something is wrong with your job or with you. It is a biological response to a structural feature of modern life that your ancient nervous system was never designed for. Knowing this does not eliminate the feeling, but it changes your relationship to it. You are not detecting a real danger. You are experiencing a mismatch between an ancient system and a modern structure. The second is reducing the sharpness of the transition. The dread is worst when Sunday feels like one world and Monday feels like a completely different one. When you can blur the boundary, when some of what you do on weekdays connects to who you genuinely are, when you bring some self-direction into your work week, when Monday morning holds something you have at least some control over and interest in, the gap narrows and the transition costs less. The third is recognizing that the version of you that exists on weekends is not the real you and the weekday version an imposter. They are both you, the ancient self that wants to live on its own terms, and the modern self that participates in a structured world that provides the material conditions of modern life. Both are real, both are yours. The dread is the cost of maintaining both. Ancient humans never had Sunday night dread because their world never asked them to be two different people on a weekly schedule. Your world does ask that. And the feeling you have every Sunday evening is the precise, accurate, involuntary signal of that cost. It is not weakness. It is not a character flaw. It is the sound of an ancient system meeting a modern invention and finding them incompatible.